You have the power to manipulate light. Using Photoshop or similar, you can change the highlights and shadows of a subject to suit the art you want to create. And in this stream, I'm going to show you how. I'm Josh at Anesthetic Design. I've been making graphic art for 20 years now, and in that time I've found that often images you download or get supplied to use in some artwork don't really have the lighting that you're looking for. Sometimes the lighting is a bit flat. Occasionally that can be on purpose for model shoots and things so that you can relight it yourself. But often you'll download something and you'll think, that's cool, I just wish it was lit from the other side, or that looks really a render, like just doesn't quite look the way you want it to. Today I'm going to show you the basics of how to make the lighting on a flat model look more dynamic, and then you can apply those same basics to relighting stuff yourself if you wish. The tutorial elements, slow day. The tutorial elements for this stream are available at the link in the description. You can see them here by my head on my lovely website. It's the first one here. It is free for you to download, and what you will get in your pack is some of them. We've got a texture, and then there's some more textures inside this PSD here, which I'll show you a bit more about later. That is to do with, it's basically a free smart object that you can use to drop your artwork into, and it'll look like mine. It's set up the way that I set mine up. A nice little halo that I'll show you later for this same vibe. That's basically in the background there, is how our final thing is going to look today after we're finished with the tutorial. So yeah, it's basically, if we go over to Photoshop here is the flat lighting reference PNG that I have included in the pack. The render is from something from Daz 3D, which I'm going to show you more about further down the line. Cool little 3D program. And this I've purposefully done with quite flat lighting, looking pretty drab. And today we're going to liven it up a bit with some lighting and some color. And essentially, to give you a very quick rundown of the super basics of what we're going to do here is we're going to have layers of multiply and screen over the top. So let's just get a big soft brush here, and in our mask we can just pull that back there, and like that is essentially what we're doing today. Is why is that like that? Adding and removing dark bits and light bits. It seems, when you say it like that, it seems ridiculously easy, but it's a learned skill, and it's something you can practice and get better at. That's the most basic idea I can give of you straight away. Multiply to add shadow, and screen to add light. That's what it's all about. So when you're working with light, and sometimes with faces like this as well, there's a couple of fundamentals that are a good idea to have a grasp of. One being the interaction of light in general. If you have a working knowledge, basic knowledge even, of 3D software, you'll know how light casts shadows over certain objects, and about how as light hits something, it tends to create a sharp shadow and a soft shadow. And that's what we're going to be doing today, is we're going to use two layers for each of our shadows and then our highlights, we're going to do one soft shadow layer, which is going to be with a nice big soft brush, and then one not harsh shadow, but that's what we'll call the layer probably, because that's kind of the idea of it, is tighter shadows. If a light was coming from the side, you would have a shadow on the bridge of your nose, you'd have a soft shadow on the side of your face, and a harsher shadow on the bridge of your nose. And that's where anatomy comes into play as well. It's nice to know where on a face like this would you be getting the harsh shadows coming in on the inside of the eyes and things like that. And by combining the soft and the not harsh, less soft elements together, you build up that kind of more realistic looking shadow. Again, this is for use in graphic art, so you're going to be applying your own textures and stuff over the top of this as well. So this is not something, I'm not saying you'll be able to take this that we do today and put it in a magazine. It's not that level of precision. But it's something to add to your toolbox. And the more tools you have in your toolbox, the better you can answer the designs that you have in your noggin. Your brain's going to spit things out sometimes, and you're going to think, how can I do that? And if you've got a bunch of different tools, you can go, oh, well, actually, I could do it that way. So this is just one more thing to add to that. Let's get started. All you're going to need for this bit is the PNG of our lady who has been rendered out here. So we're going to imagine the light source for today will be coming from the top right, or the right on my screen at least. But imagine the light is kind of coming across from the front of the face down over her, which means we're going to have highlights in these areas, and then the harshest highlights at the top, and then same the deeper, softer shadows around the soft side of the face, darkest right down here, and then the harsher shadows are going to be like where the light catches, or the light rather has been blocked by harsher elements of the face. To start with, because we're going to be multiplying and screening this layer over the top, we're going to do any corrections we want to do to this layer first before we start on making shadows. The first thing I would like to do is just up the vibrance of this a little bit. You can see it's a little bit drab. It just never really reaches black and never really reaches white. It's a bit washed out. So if you hit Control L, you will find, if you do that on the correct layer at least, you will find that you get your levels box come up, and this shows you the levels of data in the image and where they lie. So what we can do is just squeeze, this is the black values, and we'll just squeeze those back in so that this value here comes to black, and squeeze that value back in there so that that value comes to white. And then we've sort of instantly livened up the image a little bit. You can see here it's looking like we've got the blacks in there and we've got the highlights on the forehead that we like. If you come down to the bottom here, we can open an adjustment layer, which is this little yin yang symbol, and add in just a touch, I think, of vibrance. This layer is currently going over the top of our character, but if we add in just a touch of vibrance, it'll liven up those skin tones a little tiny bit, plus 25 say, and then select both layers and Control E to flatten them both together. Now that we have it livened up a bit, there's just a couple of little tweaks that I want to make. So you can see that the highlights on these earrings are at the front because the shot was lit from the front. So I want to, because the light is coming from the top right, I want to, I think, just get rid of that one. So we can select this with a lasso tool, and as that's all just black in there, we can just brush that away. I don't mind this little highlight on the edge there. I think that could still count as like the light coming around the front of the face and catching on that edge. And as jewelry is a very shiny thing, it can catch light in ways that are unexpected. So I think that's okay. This highlight over here, I want to copy and use in a different area. So I'm going to layer via copy and then turn off that layer that we just made. Then on our original layer, again, select around that area and brush it out so that the highlight is gone. Change the highlight layer of the one we just copied to screen, and we're going to transform it. We're going to flip horizontal. So if you click transform and then right click, you can go flip horizontal. So it's that way around, and just make it a bit bigger and a bit angled so that it's on the top corner there, so that the light that's coming from up above here is hitting that area of the jewel and making the highlight. As I zoomed in there, I noticed there's a couple of little blowouts there on the side of the mouth, which I just want to quickly clean up. We have the magic of the healing brush. If you hit J for the healing brush, that's such a silly letter, but okay, that's what it is as default. You can just, on your layer, paint in there and it'll get rid of those. In some instances, this doesn't work great, and using the clone brush can work better if you know what you're doing with it, but for tiny blemishes like this, just be as accurate as you can, paint them out with the spot healing brush that you get when you press J, and that will cause all your life's problems to disappear. Sorry for the voice, and sorry for being late a bit, by a whole week in fact. Tonsillitis kicked my ass last week, and I've been on these bad boys. Phenoxy. Okay, I'm not going to try and say that now, but maybe you can see what that says on there. Some kind of antibiotic anyway, and seems to have done a good job, so I'm happy with that. Right, now that I think we're feeling happy with our character as a whole, we can start, I think, painting in these areas of light and shadow by duplicating up the layer. So you've got your layer here, which should just be a single layer of the face. If you have any above them, like from doing the highlights and things, just merge it all together for now. That is fine. We want one nice clean layer, and we're going to hold Alt, click the layer and drag it up, and that will give you a duplication of the layer, or you can right click and go duplicate layer if you want to. Then up here, hold Alt again and click between the two layers. When you get this little symbol, that creates a clipping mask, which means that, you know, I don't know if you can see, it's just in the edges here. It sort of stops the pixels from doubling up in areas where they may do that. So yeah, this layer that's above the top layer now, I want you to multiply, and this will become our first shadow layer, our soft shadow layer. Down at the bottom right, click this rectangle with a circle in it, and that's your layer mask. And you will see up here that has created a mask, which is all white right now. We want it to be all black. So if you hit Control I, that will turn that all black. And then you can see the multiply layer is not affecting our artwork right now. So with, as I've said, a big soft brush, we can start, make sure your color selected is white, so that we want to draw white back onto the mask so that it starts showing these areas of shadow. It would be particularly harsh sort of on the side of the head where the light really won't reach around that side of the head at all. And just what you can do is build it up slowly with just clicks. Try not to just click, hold down, and just draw everywhere you think it's going to go, because then if you have to Control Z, it takes away the whole thing. So it's easier to just build it up slowly with clicks where you think the shadow should go. And if you make a click that you don't like, you can just Control Z that straight away, rather than having to Control Z an entire huge brush stroke that you've made. As we get finer on the detail, you can reduce the brush size a little bit and start adding in shadows in other areas, smaller areas with smaller brushes. But don't go too ham with that, because we're also going to have the secondary shadow layer. It's a good idea as you're doing this, once you get to about where you think you want to be, start turning the layer on and off and see if there's any shadow in places that you don't like, or if there's any places you wish there was more shadow. Don't worry too much about, I mean, this, because we're masking rather than just drawing directly, this can all be adjusted later. Like, rather than, say, getting a big brown brush, like if the shadow was going to be this some shade of brown, there has to be some shade of brown in there, surely. Some shade of brown, and just like drawing it all in, and then multiply that, and like that's great and everything, but then how do you edit that later? Whereas when you've got everything in a mask, the reason we duplicate the layers up is because everything is already the right color for the shadow of the color below it. And the reason we use the masks is because these are nice and easy to edit later on if we would like to, if we need to, want to, must do to save the lives of our children. It's easily done. What we can do now is duplicate this up again. You're going to notice it gets pretty brutally dark. And we can pull... We can... what we're going to do is this top layer, again here, the top one, we've got that mask selected there, of the one we've just duplicated up. And we hold Alt and backspace, or, well, that's filled it all white, so we hold Control and backspace, that's the one, Control backspace, and it will fill the entire mask with black again, which is what we want. Now we can start coming in on the face here and picking out some finer details that we want to have a bit more shadowed. Oh my, I'm all zoomed in. So what you do here is with a medium-sized brush, start drawing in shadows that right now you will think they do look too extreme because like they are extreme on purpose. Just to start building some real shape in there. And then you use a soft brush and hit X on your keyboard, and that switches the palette back so that you can start then just softening out the edges where you think it might be necessary to do so. And again, this is all stuff we're gonna knock back, so it'll look extreme when you're working on it and stand out like, wow, that doesn't look right kind of thing. But then when you pull back from it, select both. So select one layer and hold shift and select the other layer so you've got them both selected, and then mess with the opacity at the top here. You can pull the opacity back and all of a sudden it starts to make sense. It's not too extreme, not too much. And it's gonna have a ton of textures and crazy shtick all over the top of it anyway, so, you know, we're good. We're good. Sorry, that sound probably sounded horrible on the microphone. Why did I do that? Don't do that. Note to self. And then the highlights is, again, sort of similar vibe again. So we duplicate this layer up again. We Control or Alt click again, Alt backspace again in the mask so it's hidden. But then now instead of multiply, we change our lighting mode to screen, and then as you use your big soft brush to start brushing this in here, you'll see it's just starting to add in the highlights. So think about where light would strike. Obviously the top of the head and the side of the head. And then think about, like, you could even use your own face. You have one, don't you? Right? Sorry if you don't, but if you have your own face, think about when light comes from here, where does it hit? Okay, it hits here first, and then it'll hit like the bridge of your nose. And then it'll hit like this sort of cheek pad here that'll catch a little bit of light on there, and then perhaps as it comes down here there'll be little teeny tiny highlights on the edge of your nose and the tops of your lips perhaps, if you want your art to look that way. And again, just a matter of clicking until you feel as though you have clicked all the areas that need it. Now that I'm looking at that, I'm wondering if it needs some shadow underneath underneath that eye on that side. Would the shadow be shadow in there if it was lit from above? Probably. I don't think that looks bad. This needs some highlight above that lip there, and then just on that chin as well. I think there would be some hitting, and I think that's all the areas that I would like to have just lit slightly more. And then one final layer for this style of lighting. Again, duplicate it up, Control backspace, right one first time. That time it's like a USB stick. You never goes in the right way the first time. But this time again, so we've done the big soft highlights, and now we want to do the harsher highlights, where there's like the ridge of your nose is a good one, the top of your lips can be a good one. Sort of think of tighter curves, so the side of your face and the top of your head are quite large curves, and the ridges of your nose, your brow, your lips are tighter curves, and they will catch light for these small highlight areas that we're about to pop in. Same again, this time with a smaller brush and just using white on the mask, draw in the areas that you are looking to highlight. Just a tiny pop on the cheek there. And then if you want to soften off the edges of any of that, switch back to a black brush and just, again with your clicks, so that there's nothing too harsh. That is all of the highlights. So if you, yeah, that's the final highlights there. So if you turn off all of your layers at once, you'll see we go back to the flat version, which had sort of the pop of extra level and color that we popped on there. But then with the lighting, it really brings it to life and just makes it feel like a sort of a life still piece, if you will, that you can then apply some textures to, and it'll have more to go on than just a flat piece. One thing that I did with my, I've closed it. One thing that I did with my example that was in my example piece, if I show you here, that was the flat one. I really boosted the colors, and the highlights in the eyes are pretty similar to the highlight on here, and I've got this rim lighting around this side, which I'm going to show you now. You can see I really boosted the colors on those ones. It was for the YouTube thumbnail. You know, if I'm applying texture over the top of this, like, it's gonna be black and white. So actually super boosting the color is down to your personal preference and what you want to do in your artwork. If you are going to use this as a piece, you can boost the colors as much as you like. I like to use vibrance over just pumping up the saturation because I think it gives a nicer finish. But you can manipulate it the way you want. That's what this whole thing is about. Last little thing here is that rim lighting that I showed you. So if you want to just duplicate up your highlight layer just that one last time and delete the mask, what you can do is hold Control and click on the layer. So if you hold Control down, you'll see you get that little square there. So that means that when you click and select on that layer, it is selected all around the edge here. You see how we've got the marching ants around the edge. If you then, with the selection, click on your layer mask, it'll create a layer mask that's the shape of the face up here, as you can see. With that selected, hit Control I, and it'll turn it all the way around. Invert it, I mean, turn it around. And then if you drag that layer to the side, you'll see that here around the edges, we start to get that kind of light pop in. What I want to do for this one is have like this area up in the spikes quite harsh, and then soften it off as it comes around the face. So we're going to do two things to this one. In this layer mask up here, you can double click it, and then in these options at the side, there is an option called feather. I want you to just pull that up until you think it's looking how you want it to look. Over here, you'll see the edges of the mask start to feather, obviously, blurring somewhat, and that'll give you the edge that you like there. What I want you to do now is duplicate that layer as it is, and turn off the top one. And then this bottom one here, on the mask, with the mask selected, draw in black to get rid of it on the face. So you've just got that rim lighting coming around on the crown of thorns there. And then with this top one, you can turn it back on, double click the layer mask again, and then really pump that feathering up for this one so that you get the softer lighting coming around, like it's lit from behind, and the lighting is blocked out by the jewelry. And then you can use your soft black brush to get rid of the lighting at the top there. So it's harsh at the top and soft at the bottom, and you can pump the opacity up there if you really want to, just to really make that rim lighting stand out. And then now if you turn off all of your, if we get the original in here, and oh yeah, I can't do that. Let's save this off as the PSD so we can chuck the original PNG in here behind that. And then if we turn that off versus, then what was that, like 20 minutes work, 30 minutes work? And you've got something much more usable for your graphic art. And what we have here, you can then take and apply in your own artwork. If you want to see how it might look like the way that I would work it, in your pack that you downloaded, there is a file called anesthetic style example. Open that up and it'll be this style example sphere. Down here at the bottom where it says your art goes here, just double click this item and it'll open up this sphere, which is a smart object. You can either turn that into a smart object or just flatten it. Make sure you've saved it somewhere though if you do flatten it, and drop it into this smart object. Once it's in here, just hit Control Save on the smart object, and then when you close it, it will have updated into the style example, which you can then adjust to your own liking. You can go in and adjust more some of the layers. If you see in here where the threshold is for the smart filters, you can click those, and if you adjust these levels up and down, it will create more or less of the vibe that you're going for. And here's one I made earlier using that exact same model. Just adjusted the lighting a bit, I think, and there's the little halo effect in the background there that also comes in the pack that I downloaded, and you can do your own thing with it. You can try and recreate this if you like. I think it's a pretty cool effect, and yeah, that is how we do relighting in Photoshop. Same principles apply if you have downloaded something that's not lit in the direction that you want or quite how you would like it. Apply the same techniques. You can multiply if something's too highlighted, multiply over the top of it. If something's too shadowy, screen over the top of it, and use those same techniques of brushing a little bit at a time and building the highlights and shadows in 2 layers to make them feel nice and natural. One soft layer, one harsh layer, and you're on a good path. to relighting your own subject. I hope that was helpful. I hope you had a good time and that we are closer because of the things that we've been through. I will be back similar time next week. Links and all that good stuff down below. Like, subscribe, all that jazz. And hope you enjoy your week. Have a good one. Cheers.